the city of Wildwood for Monday, June 13, 2022. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Bowlen,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni, Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember McCutcheon, Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher, Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi, Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here. All right, welcome everyone. Good to see you. Moving into mayor comments and announcements, we have a special guest with us this evening, Miss Nancy Stevens, Wildwood resident who happens to be running for Missouri House of Representatives for District 88 on the Republican side. Miss Stevens, would you like to come forward and introduce yourself and say a few words?
Good evening. Is this on? Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Stevens. I'm running for the redistricted area as a state rep for House District 88. It encompasses part of Wildwood, Eureka, and Ellisville. And I've lived in Wildwood for about 25 plus years. I own a small business with a consulting group, and I work predominantly in healthcare and public health. And for the last few years prior to COVID, I was working I was going to Jeff City to help some of the reps work on some of the grassroots bills. So they were trying to get some healthcare bills passed, and I was trying to solicit support. So I kind of learned my way around down there and got to meet a lot of people. And then maybe 6 months ago, got called back and asked to run for an office. And so here I am. I have a business that I'm juggling along with trying to run a campaign, but I figured the best place to start was to go to the city councils and introduce myself. And so here I am. I'm in a primary on August 2nd, and then there'll be a general election. I have a Democratic, there are 2 Republican candidates and 1 Democratic candidate. So I was just coming to introduce myself, and I have a Facebook page, and there'll be some campaign information coming out. And if anybody wants to call me or email me, I'll more than happy to respond to them. Okay, I'm hoping that all the work I've done over the years is going to prepare me to juggle all that. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm anxious to do it. I'm excited. If I win, I will be ecstatic. If I don't win, I continue on with my business. So does anyone have any questions?
Any questions from Ms. Stevens? Councilmember Dodwell?
What's going to be your top priority when you get there?
Well, one of them always is going to be related to healthcare, because the healthcare industry right now is facing kind of a decline. It's in the middle of a crisis, whether you're hospitals in Missouri, long-term care, or public health departments. They're struggling with staffing, and they're struggling with systems. During COVID, a lot of their systems had decayed or declined, and people were in kind of a crisis mode during that time. And that is in part why I'm doing this, was because I got a lot of solicited support to try to help them out. I work in rural hospitals. I have nursing homes I do throughout the state of Missouri, and I work in public health departments. I have 20 public health departments that I help staff. By staff, I contract dietitians to go into the facilities and help provide the public health nutrition. And then we do management consulting for some of the nursing homes. We also do the dietetic consulting for the nursing homes, and then also for some of the rural hospitals. However, whatever you know about healthcare, right now, the situation is pretty dire. There are a lot of businesses that have closed or on the verge of bankruptcy. Some of the rural hospitals have closed down. And then the problem being that was one of the major employers in the town. And so it caused either people to be out of work, or it required them to go to another location. So, I don't have all the answers to fix it, but I know the information, and I know how to navigate myself through the system. And I'm hoping I can bring some things that will help figure out a way to work through that. One of the other things is I'm a wife and a daughter of a veteran, and that's of special interest to me, because I think we have a place, a workforce community with the veterans that do return, and there's a way to incorporate or blend them into the system because there's a dire need for more employees in our state. So that was my second thing. The third thing, of course, is always just the budget. I'm interested in that because I've run a business in Wildwood for over 30 years. And so that's always going to be in the back of my mind. That's an important factor. And then education, but more focused on workforce education because we need colleges and the graduate schools. Those people do very well with themselves. We need people in the system that actually are different kind of employees and that we give some regard to the kind of work they want to provide for, or they could provide for us. So I hope that answers some, and probably other things. Some of it depends on what you're faced with rather than what you choose to do, right? Yes, sir.
Councilmember Bros.
Yeah, I was just going to say if you could maybe forward your contact information maybe to Mr. Cross here and he
Yes,
could send it to
absolutely.
us so we have it.
Okay.
Is that okay, Steve?
I already have it and I will be happy to send that. to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is that it?
All right. Any other questions from Ms. Stevens? So thank you so much for
Okay,
being here,
thank you. I
introducing yourself,
appreciate it.
answering questions. Appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Okay, moving next, the Wildwood Historic Community Markers Program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Robin Keefe, and I'm a planner with the Department of Planning and Parks, as many of you know. And I'm here to just give a brief background on this program. At the beginning of the year, the into the Wildwood points of interest map so that people visiting our city can take historic driving tours around our city and visit these various points of interest and learn about the community's history. At the end of last year, our final marker, the Orville Historic Community Marker, was installed and thus concluded this wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, moving next to informational items, other than the regular meeting agenda items, we have 14. Before we get into action items, is there anything under information that any member of the council would like to discuss or about which you may have questions? Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, can somebody fill me in on the two remaining quick lane dates that we need? Is this going to help our project? Is it in progress?
Which project is that?
At the Main Street,
Okay.
Center Road, sorry, Center Avenue.
Yeah, that's, we actually have a bill. You're talking about the bill relating to, that's on the council agenda. Okay. So 26 So let's see. Where do we? Sure. Councilmember
Yeah,
Gaetano.
I think the question is not really about the bill, but in the memorandum, there are, I believe we're down to now one outstanding quitclaim deed that still needs to be turned in by a property owner.
So
Two.
is Mr. Bennett or
Well,
Mr. Brown, which of you are handling that? Okay, Joe, would you please address that question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Of the two remaining deeds, one was not completed correctly, and so I just have to follow up with that owner. And the other is a couple that have received a number of letters from the city regarding the quitclaim deed process, and we've yet to be able to kind of reconcile their concerns. So out of the two, one I believe is outstanding. The other, as I say, it was just not completed in the format necessary. But of the other 20, of the total 21, we have 19 here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Edens.
Yep, I have a couple questions, but one I was going to ask during main session, but since we're on this topic, I'll go ahead and ask it now. Does that affect the bill tonight for any of the improvements without all 20?
So the question is whether the status of the quitclaim deeds it affects what the council should do with respect to the bill. I'm trying to find it. So this would be 2711. So that bill authorizes the execution of the deed. So do you have an answer for that, Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Mayor, I do. The 19 quitclaim deeds that are before you tonight have been signed by the owners and are ready for action by the city council and signature by the mayor. With the signature by the mayor, the recording of the deeds can be completed. And once they are recorded, they are, for all intents and purposes, cannot be questioned any longer. So tonight I did not include the two that were problematic. I just provided you the 19 that are ready for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, that helps me understand why we need to move forward with it, because in my mind, I saw two chunks of a road that couldn't quite make a complete line, and I get it now. Okay, so I have a comment now under the for information with Celebrate Wildwood, and I saw the discussion about with incorporating the Route 66 theme about whether or not the route needed to be longer than it was previously. And I would just say from my experience, my first time when the route started at the Schnucks parking lot versus starting at the church last year, it felt congested in a different way. I think it would be nice if the route was longer. We felt like we got mobbed a little bit more and it was harder to keep the pace going because everyone was clustered, which is also in a pandemic, maybe not what you want to do. You want to maybe give people more of an opportunity to spread out anyway. I just know it was definitely different. And I hope the band could be there, but I also just wanted to say thank you to the Parks and Recreation staff and also to Public Works for staffing and putting on an amazing Green Rock Trail Challenge. I went and did all, I'm going to round up to 8 miles, 7.9 counts as 8 miles of the hike with a friend. And I heard nothing but compliments from every participant that was there about how professionally they thought it was handled, how completely safe the event was. We, had an extra aid station and bathroom along the trail that I wasn't expecting. And I thoroughly enjoyed it and have already had a compliment on my t-shirt, which I earned. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gaetano.
All right, thank you. I'll start with that comment about the Celebrate Wildwood Parade, since I serve on that committee as a liaison. We did discuss that. In fact, Mr. Vunich is going to speak with the Schnucks or Desco, I guess that's what they're called, to see if that's an option for us. Should we start our parade from that location, because the committee has brought up the same concerns you've mentioned. And we will also be following up with the council on your golf cart driving skills to make sure that you keep it moving. So look for a memorandum closer to the parade on that. But the other item I have is just related to the pedestrian bridge. I think the department and city administrator are aware of the complaints I've received regarding the slow progress or lack of progress since December. And is there anything that we could do as far as tidying up the area within that construction fence? Because the grass is growing very tall within there. If we can clean that up a bit, I know that's been some of the complaints, and then certainly whatever we could do to nudge that process along, or what you see as the next steps.
Okay, sorry. That's right. Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Mr. Vunish will probably have an update for you regarding that cleanup of that area and the progress. With mayor's permission.
Mr. Benich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Garatano, I'll have our contractor or the contractor under contract get out there and address the matter as quickly as possible, hopefully in the next day or two.
Just a quick follow-up. It looks like the outstanding steps regarding this is the legal description for the gore strip. Is there progress on that being made? And what's next after that?
That would be John.
City Attorney Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did receive a copy of the legal description from the surveyor that the city's been working with, and we will commence action to acquire the property based on that shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under information before we go to action items? Councilmember Clark?
Yes, I can save this for the council meeting if you want, but it's on 4D1, the design of structure 3-107. That's the culvert on Wild Horse Creek Road. We've narrowed it to a 1 lane at this point, and I'm just curious as to how we determined that 1 lane is sufficient. The narrowing it down to 1 lane is sufficient, because it does have some structural, noticeable structural problems, but of course we don't know what's underneath in the culvert itself. And so I don't know what the criteria is for determining that, and what the rating scale is for determining that. If we could get that information, we could know more about how to go forward in the council meeting on this.
Thank you. And that relates to Bill 2717. I want to mention one thing about that in a moment, but before I do, to answer your question, Mr. Brown, do you have a response to Councilmember Clark relative to, I think essentially what she's asking about is the safety of the 1 lane that's currently in place?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Yeah, the department's been on site a great deal in the past week or so, and we've viewed and inspected the structure with ourselves and Cochrane Engineering, as well as Kelp Contracting. So by and large, the decision to reduce the structure to a single lane was based on engineering judgment. There is no explicit criteria that I could quote to you, quite frankly. It was more the judgment of the individuals involved in the inspection of that structure, that the best approach for the foreseeable future is to reduce it to a single lane and then move forward as quickly as we can with additional engineering towards a replacement structure, or potentially a short-term repair that we might be able to complete. So it was felt that by doing the restriction to the structure, it was done under the abundance of caution, knowing that the deterioration that we are seeing is really related only to the wing wall of the structure, not the main portion of the structure. It's related to the wing wall only at this point in time. So that's kind of the rationale behind the decision to modify the traffic over the structure.
Councilor Clark.
Yes, if it's if we already know that it's only the wing walls, then we wouldn't need the Cochrane to come in and do this full evaluation. So I'm thinking that maybe we don't know everything that's under there yet. If we need them to come in and evaluate and do an analysis and give us actual data. And without that, I'm still a little skeptical of whether or not we know that even one lane is safe, or if maybe 2 lanes are safe.
So to resolve it expeditiously, one of the things that the council will be asked to do is to do a second reading on that tonight so that we can sort of get to the bottom line. But it sounds like what has Rick Brown, is it the case that at this point, the engineers, and I know you're an engineer, have used their best judgment relative to the bridge, and is it the case you're comfortable or not with the safety as it exists now, but believe that we should move forward with this expeditiously to get it to 2 and all resolved conclusively? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a fair statement. Again, and I think I've provided some information previously that this restriction to a single lane at this point seems to be the best approach. That's not to say that if things change, and when I say change, if there's a strong drainage or storm event, we could see a change in that wing wall and further deterioration and decide that we do feel it's necessary to close the whole structure. So we are watching it literally on a daily basis to make sure that it doesn't deteriorate. And if it does, that would be the next step that we recommend, is closing the road completely to traffic.
Go ahead.
Yes, I want to be on the record that I would, that I feel that it's subjective engineering is not a safety measure to take, that more so I would err on the shutting it down until we're very fast in getting in somebody to evaluate it by actual data, by objective data, and maybe we can open it up fully or have a limit, a weight limit that goes across there, because we do have on Wild Horse Creek occasional very large trucks go down through there, or even the dump trucks that are going to be maybe heavier than the semis at times.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add a little bit to this conversation. Director Brown and I did speak about this about 10 days ago when it was brought to my attention, because the question was, do we shut Wild Horse Creek down in both directions, or do we do one, or do we do none? And Mr. Brown, please correct me if I misspeak. But the engineers the professional engineers that the city hired to come out and take a look at the integrity of that box culvert, it was their interpretation at the time was that the deterioration was not to a point where we needed to shut anything down. And so that was their determination. It was Mr. Brown and I that made the determination, again, erring on the side of caution, extreme caution, to at least limit the load on that going over that culvert, since it was just the wing wall that seems to be deteriorating, so that the 2 vehicles weren't on there at the same time and double the weight load. So we figured we'd shut one down. We're going to try to get that repaired or replaced as soon as possible, and that is yet to be determined. But we made the determination just to make absolutely certain that there was. So we've gone further than the engineers who actually looked at it, who do this on a daily basis, actually suggested. So we feel pretty comfortable in our decision to at least close one lane and limit the weight on that overpass. Thank you.
And what is that weight limit that you're expecting?
Mr. Brown.
The structure, Councilmember Clark, is already load restricted. We have not changed the posting. I believe it's 32 tons for a single unit vehicle. It might be more or less than that for a multi-unit truck. But it is already load restricted at that location currently.
Okay, thank you. Anything else under information? Councilmember Ottenberg.
Just on the subject of that culvert that Councilmember Clark was asking some questions about, I rode across that bridge on Saturday morning, And based on what I saw, I would suggest that someone might want to go out and take a look at the guardrails that are currently in place and make a determination if they're adequate to provide the proper level of safety. In my mind, based on what I saw, it looks like they could be improved or strengthened.
Okay, thank you. So noted. Without objection, Mr. Brown will do that expeditiously. Anything further under information? Okay, moving into action items, would there be any objection to handling, we got 3 items, the application for use of city facilities by Alive for Pedal for Peace, and then we have a couple of receipt and files before we go into an executive session. Would that be okay to rearrange the agenda with everyone so we can let our city team kind of get ready for the meeting and not have to worry about coming back? Okay, perfect. Mr. Vinich, the application for use of city facilities for Alive Inc. Pedal for Peace. And we have we have your letter, and I believe your recommendation is that we proceed with this, but go ahead and tee this up, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, in your packet tonight was a recommendation report from the Planning and Parks Committee that supports the allowance for this particular organization to use the John L. LeCave Memorial Trailhead. It will be a rest stop on a longer route. It will not be the origin or destination, so to speak, of the event itself. The Planning and Parks Committee supported it, and tonight the department is seeking a favorable action on this particular matter so we can notify the organization and they can proceed forward in September. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Vinich, or does someone like to make a motion? Councilor McCutcheon?
Yeah, I move that we accept the application for use of city facilities by Alive Inc.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Is there? Okay, so you were seconding it? Okay, go ahead with your question.
Do we know, are we providing them extra police assistance or anything else, or is this group providing all of that themselves?
Mr. Vinich?
Mr. Dodwell, the group is not requesting any police assistance. The only thing that they will be using at the trailhead are the existing restroom facilities.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing no questions or discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. Vinich, the first receipt and file PZ 3-21.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. The item that the mayor has referenced is just an update report from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Relations and anticipates having something to City Council by the fall of this year. If there are any questions regarding the update letter, the department would be glad to try and answer them at this time.
Any questions on this item? All right, seeing none, last show PZ 4-10.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission granted amendments to a conditional use permit that governs the Wildwood Historical Society, which is located on Route 100, just to the west of Hinken Road. The amendments to the conditional use permit will allow the Hinken House, the former single-family dwelling, to be used as an extension to the museum, an art gallery, or a specialized type of private school. The intent of the request was to allow the society to have more flexibility and hopefully garner additional funds for their efforts at that particular location. As with any conditional use permit, the Planning and Zoning Commission provides to the City Council. The City Council has the right to exercise its power of review within 15 days of the receipt of the report. A 15-day period begins today. So if there are any questions regarding the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission or the process of power review, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Vinich or any comments on PZ 4-10? All right, seeing none, thank you for that. So that takes everything off the agenda except for the executive session. We'll need a motion and a roll call vote to go into executive session. The motion is made by Councilmember Farmer, second by Councilmember Clark. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote on to proceed into executive session, please.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rainbow,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into executive session. Those of you in the audience, if you would please let us have this time to ourselves as we have to. We would appreciate it. We'll let you know when we're done. And so that would mean you need to leave the room. And then for council members, if you would please close laptops and turn off microphones. We're back into the work session. Travis, do you have everything up and running? Okay, you ready? You good? All right, so we're back in to the work session. The only thing left, motion to adjourn the work session made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion to adjourn the work session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Member Fletcher,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving next into public participation. I think we have a couple of speaker cards. I just want to mention a few things about that before we begin. Public comment is a valuable component of our meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak must indicate that they would like to do so by completing a speaker card and handing it to the city clerk, who is to your left, or if you are joining us online by using the raise hand feature. When your name is called, please state your name and ward. To ensure that all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation. I will let you know when that time is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks and identify the official that you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so as to all questions directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting, and we may also post any responses on the City Council page of our website. Finally, please be respectful to others in making your remarks. This means that interrupting others and using profane and abusive language are prohibited. And I want to thank everyone in advance for following these. First speaker card, please.
The first speaker card is Dwayne Marquardt wishing to comment about not including 162 Strucker and 210 Strucker into the SCOD.
Mr. Marquardt, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Or we can pass while they're doing that and do the next person if you want to wait. Okay, well, we can, because it's going to take a while, so we can either start with you or you can go after the next person, whichever you prefer. Okay, next speaker card, please.
The next speaker card is Ron Petruska wishing to comment about Ashley Grove.
My name is Ron Petruska. 40. I'd like to clean up 17.
That's better. Our lot is one of the 4 lots that are adjacent to the southern border of the proposed Ashley Grove subdivision. I'd like to start by relaying the following from Gene Calcaterra's letter to the City Council. Gene is a trustee of the Stone Mill Homeowners Association, and each City Council member received Gene's entire letter on June 10. Gene's on vacation and unable to attend this evening, so he asked me to speak on his behalf. On October 9, 2017, Mayor Bowlen revealed his 2020 vision plan for the city of Wildwood. In section 4, it states, among other items, that, quote, Smaller residential lots are inconsistent with the Wildwood image, close quotes. The mayor stated in the June 7, 2021 P&Z Zoom meeting that he wants the homes built on this 5-acre site to be comparable to the 17 recently built adjoining homes in architecture, square footage, lot size, and value. The existing residents assumed that the city would require the same lot sizes and building requirements that they did for the 17 adjacent homes based on this statement. At the March 7, 2022 P&Z meeting, it was voted on and unanimously approved that all the homes to be built in Ashley Grove would have side entry garages only, which is the exact same requirement that Stone Mill and Old Town Park had to follow. Gene relayed this information to the adjacent residents and found that requiring all homes to have side entry garages was a pivotal point in making the proposed subdivision fair and equitable. At the April 4, 2022 P&Z meeting, the developer came back to the table and requested that 3 of the 11 new houses have partial front entry garages because the lot sizes were too small to have total side entry garages for those homes. At the May 2nd, 2022 P&Z meeting, the committee reversed its vote, requiring all homes have side entry garages, and approved the request for 3 of the 11 new homes to have partial front entry garages. The existing residents strongly believe that this is showing preferential treatment to the developer compared to what was required from the developer of Stone Mill and Old Town Park. The existing residents do not feel that it's in their best interests are being taken into consideration with this revised proposal. What the existing residents are asking for is that Ashley Grove conform to the March 6, 2016 Department of Planning text change to the City of Wildwood's master plan, requiring Stone Mill have a maximum unit density of 1.75 units per acre with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square foot. The current Ashley Grove proposal has a density of 2.4 units per acre. In other words, Stone Mill has 12 homes located on 8 acres, and the concurrent proposal for Ashley Grove would have 12 homes on 5 acres. This is an increase in unit density of 27% compared to Stone Mill. The existing residents feel strongly that the solution is not to have some homes built with partial front entry garages on smaller lots. We feel that a fair and equitable solution is to reduce the number of new homes from 11 to 9 so that all houses can have side entry garages and have lot sizes that are closer to and more in line with the lot sizes in Old Town Park and Stone Mill. On at least 2 occasions during the May 2nd P&Z Zoom meeting, it was said that the latest proposal is a, quote, good compromise. This latest proposal is not a compromise compared to what was required for the Stone Mill, Old Town Park, and the 4 other new builds that will be located on Center Avenue. We believe the latest proposal exhibits preferential treatment to the developer compared to what was required of the Stone Mill and Old Town Park developer. We also believe the proposal in its current form will likely have a negative economic impact on the existing adjacent 17 homeowners.
So, Mr. Petruski, how much more do you have?
1 paragraph.
Okay, because we're at the 5 here, so
Okay.
do that in about 30 seconds.
I
or
can
what?
do that.
Okay, thank you.
We request that the city council amend this proposal to have 9 new homes, not 11, so that the development is more consistent with the requirements that the adjacent subdivisions adhere to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker card, please. Actually, let's go to Mr. Marquardt, who was first, because I think everyone has his material at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. If you could give me a warning at 4, that'd be nice. Council members, my name is Dwayne Marquardt, 834 Holly Ridge, 63011. I'm here to discuss what may be unintended consequences of the SCOD legislation. This is very serious legislation, and every member of the city council must be careful that they have received documented and undeniable reasons to include a property into the SCOD. They must be very careful to avoid the mistake of voting any undeserving property into the restrictions outlined in the SCOD. Results will be devastating. Property improvement will be very difficult and even stifled because of the extreme burden of the application process, the enormous time and repeated expenses required for each time a property owner wants to make an improvement. I want to briefly review the requirements of property development if included in the SCOD. So I have that in the first page for you. No person shall develop unless they have an application fee of $2,500 plus $250 per acre, including the application fee. Environmental assessment must be provided that is less than 1 year old, and the cost of that is between $4,000 and $5,000 each time. They must have a current letter from the EPA and the Missouri DNR. And then after that, then those things all get passed to planning and zoning, P&Z, planning director, public works, and the architectural review board. And the city council must have a public hearing, which is good for 1 year. And so let's apply this on the next page, and let's apply these requirements to any time that improvements performed at the Strecker Road properties. So at 162, the application fee is going to be $3,500 every time they want to make an improvement. And then the first year, they have to have an environmental assessment. And so that's going to be $4,000 to $5,000. And then that all gets distributed. At 210, which is a different property, the application fee is it's a larger, it's going to be $4,500. And then another $5,000 for an environmental assessment. They already have a current letter from the EPA. They already have a current letter from the MDNR, and they all say that it's safe with no restrictions. So let's look at some examples. Page 3, this is the back of the house. Landscaping needs to be updated, and a small retaining wall will help protect their air conditioner. So first year, the application is going to be $3,500. Environmental assessment is going to be $5,000. Just to apply, it's going to cost between $7,500 to $8,000, and it's not the cost of the retaining wall. Something funny. And plus 2 months or more for the project to be approved. Next page. This is the basement walkout. It needs to be regraded to avoid water leakage. A larger patio is planned for enjoyable outdoor space. So first year, just to apply, $3,500. If they already have an environmental assessment done. If they don't have it, and who can afford to do that all in 1 year, they have to wait another year, it's going to be another $5,000. Again, $8,000 just to get the application fee to put in a patio. Let's go to the next one. Here's a monument style mailbox. It needs some excavation and it needs a footing. First year, if they do all of these at the same time, it's $3,500. If they have to wait for more than a year, it's going to be another $5,000, and it's going to be a total of $8,000 to apply to put in a mailbox. Let's look at the driveway on the next page. Everybody have this one here? It's the driveway here, the gravel driveway. It's the driveway at 210 Strecker Road. This is a driveway built by the Environmental Protection Agency to access the cleanup. It did not exist before the cleanup. They built it, they tested it, and they found no contaminants when they were done. This drive leads to the newborn. It needs to be smooth and updated with fresh gravel. The city wants $4,500 application fee plus a new environmental assessment on a road that the EPA built. All right. And then just to apply, it's going to be between $8,000 and $10,000 just to apply for this. That doesn't count fixing the road. Let's go to the next page. This is driveway at 162 Strecker Road residence. It needs to be updated and hopefully paved with concrete. It is in decent shape now, but will need updating in a couple of years. If they do it all in the first year, it'll be $3,500. Who can do it all in the first year? So again, I'm just a broken record, but this is what's happening over and over and over again. They need another environmental assessment. Is it going to change? Anybody? Is it going to change? No, it's not. All right. And so again, here's another $8,000. Here's the summary. Council members, as you can see, these are just typical improvements that many landowners would like to make on their property. The repeated requirements for environmental assessments, which will never change, the excessive fees and other requirements are an unbelievable burden on everyone. Council members, please remember, Scott and Tiffany know this property is safe for them and their family. They have studied this
Mr. Marquardt, how
over
much
and
more do you
over
have?
again.
How much more do you got?
Is it 4 minutes?
You're at 5, actually.
Okay, I got one more paragraph.
And
Thank
how
you.
long will that take you?
Please do not subject them to these unbelievable burdens. The following table gives you a spreadsheet for your reference. All things considered, there's no justifiable reason to include these properties in the SCOD. Combined with the expert testimony, the MDNR, the EPA, and the environmental assessment reports, your understanding of these consequences, I thank you for your no vote. Council members that have already voted in favor of Scott and Tiffany, thank you. Please remember why I have to testify in this manner at a public The comment
Ms. Marquardt,
section.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up, okay?
The city will not let us discuss this matter with any of you. That's why I'm having to be standing here today. Please use this opportunity to discuss with the other members so that they too can vote no on the SCOD on these properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker card, please.
The next speaker card is Keith Piontek wishing to comment about the SCOD.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to make some comments tonight. My name is Keith Piontek. I live at 4617 Vixen Circle in Wildwood. I'm a professional engineer with 35 years of experience in the investigation and assessment of contaminated properties. And I'm here to talk tonight about the properties at 162 and 210 Strecker Road owned by Scott and Tiffany Marquardt. The property at 210 Strecker Road is often referred to as the Callahan site, and I'll be using that terminology tonight. I previously made comments to the Planning and Zoning Commission in June of 2021 and March of this year. And I'm going to start with just a brief summary of some key points from those comments. In the comments that I submitted today, I did provide a copy of those earlier comments, as well as a letter from the Environmental Protection Agency that I'll be referencing. At the June 2021 meeting, I identified a significant error in a phase 1 environmental assessment report that had been commissioned by the city on the Marquardt properties. And after the meeting, I tried to get that error corrected. I reached out to the city. I essentially got shut down. And to this day, I still don't understand why the city, shut down my efforts to ensure that the information in the city's record on the Marquardt properties is accurate. At the June 2021 meeting, we learned that a document referred to as the white paper was the basis of the city's recommendation to include the Marquardt properties in the SCOD. And at the subsequent March meeting in 2022, I commented that I did not find the white paper to provide a compelling case for the need of the SCOD. I pointed out examples of obsolete information, error, and bias in the white paper. And by way of example, one of the concerns documented in the white paper, and also a concern that has been stressed by the mayor in his remarks advocating for the SCOD on the Marquardt's property, is the nature of the sampling for lead contamination on the Callahan site. I think the mayor in the white paper making a mountain out of a molehill on this topic. And I agree with the EPA, who found that there was no significant risk concerning this particular item. And I wish I had the time to present to you my reasoning for that, but I'm not going to have time to do that. But I'm going to stick around, and if anybody wants to ask me a question about that, I'd be happy to answer it. At the March meeting, I also discussed a letter from the EPA that I wanted to make sure that the commissioners were aware of. There's an August 2021 letter from the EPA to the city that was written after the city had expressed a number of concerns about the Callahan site. The EPA responded with a letter that addressed each of those concerns and concluded with the EPA iterating, and I quote, "The Callahan property has been cleaned up to a standard suitable for unlimited use and unrestricted exposure." So in other words, the EPA doesn't see any reason for a SCOD on the Marquardt property. That letter is included in the materials I submitted earlier today. So I have 4 requests for the council tonight. Number 1, if you've not already done so, please read that EPA August 2021 letter. It's highly relevant. Number 2, vote against imposition of the SCOD on the Marquardt properties. The EPA letter gives you a very sound technical basis for doing it. Number 3, at a minimum, vote against imposition of the SCOD on the 162 Strecker Road property. At the March 22 meeting, the mayor suggested to the commissioners they should bifurcate the properties under consideration into 2 categories: those with known contamination and those that only have suspected contamination. And it was decided that night to exclude the properties from suspected contamination from the SCOD
Well, that's the exact case one with 162 Strucker property, 162 Strucker Road property. While there's no contamination on the 210 property, and while it's adjacent to the 210 property, there isn't any evidence of contamination on the 162 property. Mr. Pointek, how much more do you have? One sentence and one paragraph. So in time, how much more do you have? I'd say 45 seconds. Okay, why don't we limit it to 30? Because I got to be fair with everybody here. So let's go with 30. Okay. So by the logic presented at that meeting and the vote that was conducted at that night, the 162 property should be excluded. Final comment, just take a step back. What's the common sense approach that should be applied to this Marquardt property? The city would sit down with the Marquardts and explain to them their concerns. There'd be an exchange of information where both sides would reach agreement with a common set of facts that would to guide the discussion. If the Mr. Pointek, I'm going to have to ask you to please end your comments. I've got to, we can't treat one differently than the other. Sure, Mayor. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker. The Marquardts have been looking for that meeting for a year.
The next speaker card I have is from Scott Marquardt, but he has checked that he does not want to speak, but the comment card indicates he's not in support of Bill 2709, and I do have a handout to.
Okay, and is that the same handout that the council received by email today? Okay, why don't you hand that out to the council? Sure, please come forward, Mr. Marquardt.
Good evening. My name is Scott Marquardt, and I am the owner of 162 Strucker Road, as most of you are already aware. This evening on your agenda is the first reading of Bill 2709, which could define the SCOD boundary to include my property at 162 Strucker Road. I'd like to clarify a few apparent misconceptions about the property. As Mr. Piontek just alluded to, 162 Strucker Road is not and never has been a part of the Callahan site. 162 Strucker Road is not and never has been any part of any EPA Superfund site. And 162 Strucker Road has never tested positive for any contaminants. Now, some of you are confused, and I can understand why. You've been provided with misleading information from city officials. The city has failed to correctly differentiate between three very confusing various properties in the area. There are three major distinctions which we're going to discuss. The Bliss site and the Strecker Forest site, which are used interchangeably by Wildwood to reference an area of dioxin contamination on the north side of Strecker Road. The second area that we're going to discuss is the Callahan site. It is the EPA's designation for 210 Strecker Road. This is a remediated former contamination site where paint waste was dumped on the south side of Strecker Road. So the Bliss Strecker Forest is on the north side and Callahan is on the south side. Now, my home at 162 Strecker Road, as I just stated, has never been part of any EPA Superfund site and is completely separate from the other two sites. So Mayor Bowlen has stated on numerous occasions in the spring of 2021 that he was unwilling to speak with me due to pending legal matters. When I asked for clarification from the city of what these pending legal matters are, I was told that that cannot be disclosed and that information is not subject to a sunshine request. I still have no idea of any pending lawsuits or any pending legal matters resulting from 162 Strecker Road. However, on the north side of Strecker Road, that property owner is suing the city. So there's confusion there. In 2016, Wildwood hired environmental stewardship concepts, and they produced a report for the city to assess EPA documents. This report contains multiple errors in that they used data from the Bliss and Callahan sites interchangeably. These findings were then later incorrectly applied to the 162 site. In 2020, Wildwood hired geotechnology to produce an environmental assessment on a portion of my two properties for the sidewalk project that was planned. They also incorrectly referenced studies performed at the Bliss and Strecker Forest site and attributed those contaminants to the Callahan site. Mayor Bowlen and the planning department have consistently presented data regarding the Strecker Forest site as if it contains to my properties. Their assertions are simply false. Mayor Bowlen has denied my expert, which is Mr. Piontek, authorization to speak with Geotechnology Incorporated regarding the report that the city commissioned. And the report contains critical errors related to my property. The white paper, which was commissioned by Mayor Bowlen, uses data here this evening. The erroneous white paper and other comments presented by Mayor Bowlen was the basis of the P&Z's recommendation to include my properties. At the March 2022 Planning and Zoning meeting, Mayor Bowlen stated that we cannot include properties regardless of their proximity to other properties that do not have solid evidence of contamination. He then made a motion to exclude all properties except for the 2 that I own. 162 Strecker Road has never had evidence of contamination and therefore, by his logic, should not be included. Again, he is mistaken on the facts. Mr. Farmer, in an arbitrary and capricious manner, made a motion at the May council meeting to have this legislation drafted based on the false information that he has been provided. So I'm confident that my properties are safe for my family in the Wildwood community. What I ask of you guys is that you please read the letter provided to Wildwood, which I included. If you
Mr.
don't
Marquardt, your 5 minutes is up. How much more do you have?
I have a few seconds here.
Okay, go ahead.
If you don't trust the EPA, then read the other documents that I included for you from other experts. My 4-year-old, my 3-year-old, my 4-month-old, my 5-year-old, and my 11-year-old play in the mud at this property. If you have any evidence that there's any contamination there, any problems, please, for their sake, let us know. The kids next door that used to fish in the pond would love to know if there's a problem. The hunters that used the property before I owned it need to know. It's your obligation, your duty, your civil duty to bring this information forward so that we can resolve it. But at this point, we're not getting anything. So since no evidence has been provided to you to support the
So, Mr.
inclusion,
Marquardt,
please
I'm
vote
gonna-
no on this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next speaker card, please. Anyone on Zoom, Travis? All right. Thank you to all who came tonight to speak during public participation. Moving next to mayor announcements and appointments, the Mcreynolds Award involving our Historic Preservation Commission. Stevens?
Mr. Bowlen, I do believe the roles are changed between the two of us tonight. This spring, I was here several times to get 100th anniversary proclamations for organizations. But tonight, I'm here to give something, not take something away. On April 19th, several commission members and Robin Keefe went to Jefferson City to accept a Historic Preservation Award. Before the ceremony began, we were joined in the rotunda by Mr. Garantino. Thanks to Robin, who submitted an application for an award, we were selected to receive the Mcreynolds Award, named in honor of Elizabeth Mcreynolds Rozier. Missouri Preservation annually gives awards to individuals or groups in Missouri who have made significant achievements in the field of preservation or in the midst of long-term preservation projects. This award has been presented for 42 years by Missouri Preservation. The awards are Missouri Preservation's way of showing the world that yes, preservation is possible and preservation is relevant. Wildwood's Historic Preservation Commission has diligently worked in the past several years to design a marker for each of the 11 communities that make up the city of Wildwood, and in turn have had them cast and installed. The goal behind these historic markers was to preserve the history of our area. They tell about the earliest settlers who lived here, descriptions of the areas, as well as why some roads have the names that they do. The locations are shown on Wildwood's Points of Interest map. Members of the commission today are a bit different from when this idea was first conceived. But as members left for one reason or another and new members were appointed, The market idea continued to be developed. Without the dedication of each member of this commission, past and present, this award would not have been possible. We are incredibly honored to have received this prestigious award and are sincerely grateful for the recognition we, the city of Wildwood, have received. And we're humbled to be placed in the same category as past recipients, as well as others who were nominated for the award this year. The honor awards are also a time to remember that historic preservation is about teamwork. And although only some commissioners were able to be in the Capitol, we all knew that behind this historic market project and the honor bestowed on us, we had a team there working behind us on this project. And there was also a village. That village behind us was known as Wildwood. It is my privilege to present the Wildwood Historic Preservation Commission represent them on April the 19th and accepting the award in the rotunda of the Missouri State Capitol. We of the Historic Preservation Commission want to say a heartfelt thank you to both the current and past mayors, city council, and the entire Wildwood staff for the support we've received on this project. We are also very proud of our Wildwood. Just as Missouri Preservation wants the world to know about preservation and acknowledge it, the Historic Preservation Commission wants all of not only Wildwood, but everyone around to know that preservation is possible, preservation is relevant. We encourage everyone, each one of you, to take a driving tour of Wildwood and see each of the historical markers. Read about our history. Use that points of interest map. Mr. Bowlen, it is with great pride and pleasure that I present the commission as their chairman, represent the commission as their chairman. This time we present the Mcreynolds Award to the city, to you, the city council, as well as all Wildwood residents. I'd like for the rest of the members of the commission who are here tonight to stand up because that's our team. And I believe, Mr. Scott, you have something else to present.
This is the resolution by the Missouri House Leadership, pretty much. And it's our staff that really puts things together. And we should all appreciate what our staff has done for this. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Sure. And you're right, you all are volunteers and we greatly appreciate the time that you spend on behalf of our city and our residents. So thank you for that as well. All right, appointments are on consent agenda. Moving next to public hearings, PZ 24-21, we have 3. This is the first. Ms. Eldridge, would you please read it?
PZ 24.
Oh, I'm sorry, my apology. I missed something. We have another award, actually. The Government Finance Officers Award, Certificate of Achievement and Award of Financial Reporting that went to Don Kaiser, I believe. Is that correct? This is something that we have received previously, and essentially it amounts to the fact that our internal accounting team does a terrific job. So congratulations to her and to you, Steve, for all the work that, and to Larry McGowan, our city treasurer, for all the work that you do in that regard.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that this is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The city primarily under the leadership of Don Kaiser as our finance officer. This is the 23rd year we received this award, 20 consecutive years. In the early years, there were a couple years that it wasn't applied for, but so the city's received it for 23 years and 20 consecutive years. So it's quite an achievement just to get it one time, much less 23 years or 20 consecutive years. It's a very, very comprehensive book about the finances. A lot of information goes in there. And so Dawn and her team is to be commended for completing that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving next to public hearings. PZ 2421 is the first one. Please read it, Ms. Eldridge.
PZ 24-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible changes to the regulations that are associated with Chapter 415.030, definitions, Chapter 415.090, NU non-urban residence district, Chapter 415.110, R1, 1 acre residence district, Chapter 415.120, R1A, 22,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.130, R2, 15,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.140, R3, 10,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.150, R4, 7,500 square foot residence district, and Chapter 415.160, R6A, 4,500 square feet residence district of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance that are intended to clarify the allowances and or prohibitions for short-term rentals within this community. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, approval of clarifications to the city's regulations relative to short-term rentals.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything you want to add relative to this item?
Yes, Mr. Bowlen, Mayor Bowlen, excuse me. I'm not used to being in
That's all right. Go
person,
ahead.
so
It's all good.
kind of got to get back into that groove. I'm having Zoom trouble tonight. That's why I'm in person, so my
That's fine.
apologies. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission has prepared for your consideration tonight its letter of recommendation relating to short-term rentals. For the most part, you may recognize short-term rentals as ARBs, or excuse me, Airbnbs, and for the most part are prohibited and have been prohibited in the city of Wildwood. The prohibition, however, took the interpretation of not just 1, 2, or 3 definitions in our zoning ordinance, but 4. So interpreting 4 definitions to reach a conclusion was often difficult, not only for the Department of Planning, our city attorney, and others, but people that were interested in potentially offering an Airbnb or similar short-term rental. Given that confusion and the desire to make the approach clearer, the Planning and Zoning Commission undertook the review and ultimately prepared the information that is before you tonight for consideration. Other than the non-urban resident district, which would allow a short-term rental under a conditional use permit, they remain prohibited in all our districts in the city of Wildwood. A short-term rental in this particular case substitutes for bed and breakfast. And so from that perspective, we stayed consistent with what we've been doing the past almost 27 years. But we now have updated our definitions to be consistent with state statute, which I think is of critical importance and was done at the urging of our city attorney. So tonight, this letter is being presented for consideration at a public hearing. After public comment, the department be available to answer any questions. And ultimately, the department would respectfully request authorization to prepare the necessary legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
I don't have any speaker cards.
And we have no one on Zoom. Okay. Any questions for Joe or comments, or would someone like to make a motion relative to the preparation of legislation consistent with what's been presented in PZ 24-21? Councilmember Clark.
I would like to make a motion to proceed with legislation.
Okay, with preparation of legislation, seconded by Councilmember Nyan. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving next, PZ 28-21, Ashley Grove. Would you please read it, Ms. Eldridge?
PZ 28-21, Ashley Grove, Cypress Real Estate LLC, care of Daniel Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district with the planned residential overlay district PRD for a 5-acre parcel of ground that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located on the west side of Center Avenue, south of its intersection with Manchester Road, street address 2623 Center Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V420032. Proposed use, a total of 12 new single-family dwellings, along with the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 13 units, all being on individual lots of record, with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, approval of a total of 11 new single-family dwellings, along with the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 12 units, all being on individual lots of record, with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas.
Thank you. Mr. Benich, anything you want to mention further relative to PZ 28-21?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and briefly as I can. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, again, as in the last instance, the Planning and Zoning Commission has provided for your consideration tonight its letter of recommendation regarding this request for a change in zoning and the application of a planned residential development overlay district. As was mentioned by the city clerk, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously supported these two components for this particular 5-acre site. As part of that support, the Planning and Zoning Commission first identified that this particular lot is located in the town center area. It is not part of the suburban residential area. It is not part of the non-urban residential area. It is part of town center. As part of town center, it carries a designation of neighborhood edge district, which restricts residential development to single-family detached dwellings on individual lots only, but at a greater density than is anticipated by this particular request. This particular request was fashioned by the Planning and Zoning Commission to be as consistent as possible with that of Stone Mill, which is in the suburban residential area. One of the key components that led to the garage issue that was explained during public participation was the desire of residents on Center Avenue, as well as elsewhere in the vicinity, not to have the internal street that is being proposed connect to Center Avenue. Therefore, the developer changed the design and created a hammerhead turnaround. By doing that, the grades in that particular area became more difficult, as well as changes that occurred at West Avenue. Out of that, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended 11 new lots for single-family detached dwellings, 8 of which will be side entry and have a minimum width of 97 feet at the front building line. Of the remaining 3, those would have 2 side entry garages and 1 front entry. 2 of those lots are on the south side of the internal street and will back to Stone Mill, with only 1 facing towards Stone Mill with the 2-in-1 configuration. In the report, there are a number of rationales and reasons for the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll let the report speak for itself in that regard, but if there are any questions after public participation, the department would be glad to answer them at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Benich, are you looking for any action on the part of the City Council tonight?
Yes, if the City Council should choose, the department would respectfully request authorization to prepare legislation consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's favorable report.
Thank you. Ms. Eldridge, any speaker cards?
No.
Anything online? Raise hands. Okay. Any questions for Joe or a motion? Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I have a question. Good to see you in person. So I read the document, but if I read it correctly, the subdivision was originally designed with a through onto Center, and then that was changed into a T, and then those 2 homes are the ones that have the garages that the resident from Stone Mill was concerned about, and then we got the letter about. And later tonight, we have a quick claims for 19 homes of the 21 that we needed the deeds for. That's Bill 2711. So what I was wondering is, if Center Road becomes public and adopted in the future, and the traffic concerns that those residents probably had with it being a through street were eased, could it go back to a design so that it's no longer a T and then have all side entry garages or rear entry at that point? And that would alleviate the other residents' concerns.
Well, first and foremost, relative to Center Avenue and the process the city's initiated regarding the quitclaim deeds and future public maintenance, the right-of-way at this stage is only 30 feet wide, which limits what we can do in terms of a typical town center street. So if in the end, the city council were to authorize the preparation of legislation and then approve it, I would encourage the city council not to consider connecting the street in the future. I think that from a buyer's perspective in the surrounding community, that would probably not be in the best interest of them or the city. Again, acknowledging that we don't have a full right-of-way width here. Maybe someday we might, but certainly not at this time or the foreseeable future.
So I
Okay.
think the short answer is no.
Yeah, so that's
Thank
a
you,
no to
Mayor.
my question. There's not a redesign that would help with the garage
I
by
appreciate
extending the road. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Garetano.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, have we closed public comment already?
Yes, we're done.
Okay. So I have several comments here pertaining to this proposal, and this is coming from the residents that either you've heard from tonight or those that are not able to be here. Planning and Zoning Commission back in March 7th had, as part of their approval, mandated side entry garages. That is consistent with Stone Mill, which is adjacent to this development, Old Town Park, which will be across the street, or the new section of, well, let me take that back. Old Town Park, which exists today on Center Avenue, there is a proposal that I believe we'll have a reading later on that also will have side entry garages. And then recently we approved the townhomes on New College Avenue with garages that are behind those homes. So everything around this Ashley Grove proposal has a rear or side entry, basically no front facing garages. The other issues I've heard are with regards to density, the compatibility with the lot sizes of the surrounding homes in Stone Mill and over in Old Town Park, and the proposal which we'll have later on tonight. Mr. Vunich, I just want to make sure I'm referring it to by the right name. Which one is that one called?
Wesley Park.
Wesley Park, okay. So compatibility with lot sizes. And then also there's been concerns and questions about the aesthetics. We have not seen any elevations at all pertaining to this development, which is uncommon because usually when we have something, we see what kind of elevations are being planned for this. So we knew up until the March 7th meeting that in the department's report, the question of side entry garages was not answered. It said to be determined, and you could see that in the report. It was crossed out since that time. So we did not have an answer on that. Now, why I mentioned this, why it means something, is that because the city council back in 1998 approved ordinance 415, which establishes the long-term philosophy of the town center plan. And in there, it says that developing properties must reflect appropriate lot size and density for those neighborhoods, development policies for established neighborhoods in the town center. So I think that was a message from the council from back then, these types of situations that we would face in the future. Again, that was passed March 23rd, 1998. So we've heard from the written comments that are attached in this report. There are 5 comments in opposition, 0 in favor. We received a letter from the trustee of Stone Mill last week with these same concerns. And then tonight's speaker as well brought this up. So in my opinion, and therefore the reason for making a motion that I'll be making is that I would be doing a disservice to our residents if we didn't hear them. And so I would like to make a motion that we refer this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And the referral back would be for what is the directive that you would be
for the reinstatement of the side entry garages as mandated by the March 7th meeting.
Okay, so refer the motion is to refer back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for reinstatement of side entry garages throughout. Is there a second to the motion made by Councilor McCutcheon? Is there any discussion on the motion to refer back to Planning and Zoning Commission? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to refer back, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to refer passes. And there was someone in the back that wanted to speak. We can't only do that during public participation. I'm sorry. So I'm not. Public hearing happened. Okay, I'm sorry. But I asked earlier if there were cards. So we can still do it, I guess, if the city attorney wants. But when I ask for cards, we've got to, you need to. So if you want to speak on this, is that okay, city attorney? Okay, go ahead and come on up. But we do need to get a card on you and.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought the public hearing.
That's all right. Go ahead.
It was my time to speak, so I apologize. First of all, I appreciate the comments. I get Stone Mill. First of all, I get exactly.
So
what
we
I'm
need
coming-
your name and address.
Oh, Dan Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I signed that legislation in 1998. I was one of the first alderman here. And that was referring to the things in the same category. This is the town center, neighborhood edge. We took that philosophy. We would just keep on going the same. I just want to let the council know that we could have put in, our first plan we came in was 30 units. We talked to the constituents. They didn't like it. You could put cottage lots that are 30 foot wide here under your zoning category. We listened, we met, we went from 20 there to 29 lots, to 13 lots to 11 lots. If you're not going to follow the zoning code, the neighborhood edge allows you to make a transition. And we get the Stone Mill people. These houses are going to be very expensive homes. Just a lot development cost, the size and so forth that you have here. You have a pond there that is very, I would say, not advantageous to the neighborhood. We've given and given and given, and I'm not going back to, if you want to send me back, fine, we're going to kill this development. Wildwood needs residents. These are going to be expensive homes. This is why we did the town center. That's why we did the planning. That's why we brought Dewani in from Florida. We did this so we would have this transition. And at the insistence of many people in the planning and zoning, the mayor, we whittled this down from 30 something lots to 11 lots. And still, that's not good enough. The reason why we did it, the two side entries and one forward, just look at what Wesley Burns did over here in those houses in the villages of Cherry Hills when you go in at the right there. Those are beautiful. You know what you force yourself to do if you do this? You put 2-car garages and you put a small house and you put a lower price point in. You hurt yourself by doing that. We talked to the planning and zoning. They understood that. The planning department, I think, understands that. And I think that it is disingenuous for us to pop in and then say, hey, we want all side entry. That's not good planning. And all you do is you get a less expensive home. And I'm very disappointed because I have worked really hard on this. I've never come back before the council since I served in the council. I thought it was a conflict of interest for 20 plus years. And I'm disappointed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stegman. And I have a question in light of that the speaker's statement for you, Joe. He made a statement that, this is a PRD. And so is it the case that without the PRD, with compliance of our rules as they stand now, the homes that could go in there would be much smaller, front entry garages and so forth? Is that the case?
I would just use the villages at Brightleaf as an example.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right. So it could be one of those things, be careful what you wish for. But in any event, since we have the motion that was made and passed, but then we had a speaker who came after the hearing closed, I want to make sure that the speaker is, all speakers are accommodated, not just this one. So I would ask, the motion has been passed. If this presentation that we just heard from the speaker changes anything, then a motion to reconsider would be in order. If not, the motion will stand as is. Councilmember Garetano.
Mr. Mayor, I'd asked you if public comment was closed because I wanted to make sure I made my comments after we had considered all the facts.
And he apparently didn't hear that.
So I continue to stand by this. I think we have to listen to our residents and find a solution that works. We have a group of residents that are not happy. And I think we're very close. And, you know, before this is just evident that we're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. And, you know, the issue was brought to light when we had the issue of the garages be removed from the.
So the question I have for the council, does anyone wish to make a motion to reconsider? If not, the motion will stand as is. Councilmember Garrett, Bertolino.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to reconsider. Once it came to us approved by planning and zoning, right?
Correct.
They went through all the maturation, that we've always gone through. These issues were discussed at that, and I guess I kind of got a knee jerk that here tonight, Joe, that yes, there were some citizens who are not happy, but I think our process worked here, and rarely does this council overturn planning and zoning unless it's really a specific issue. So I would at this point move to reconsider the reconsideration.
Well, so the motion will be to reconsider the motion to refer, and we have a second for Councilmember Dodwell. So the discussion now is solely on whether to reconsider. Councilmember Garetano.
Mr. Mayor, I oppose the reconsideration. We did not kill this plan. We're sending it back to planning and zoning just so that they can address this issue there. And maybe there's a reconfiguration that needs to be done, or perhaps there's one too many lots that doesn't allow for it to happen. So again, we're not killing this. I know that the speaker was visibly upset.
So this is only on reconsideration.
So again,
whether you want to have it decided, have the motion brought back for discussion or referral.
I would stand by that. We just have planning and zoning look at it. We've done this before many times as well, and it doesn't hurt to have an extra look at it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hopper on reconsideration only.
Yeah, I just would provide my support here for my fellow council members. I think obviously just, we want to take public opinion into consideration, but to send it back for additional research on the part of planning and zoning, when I would assume that all the information that we have, they would have done all that research and gone through that already. To rehash it again seems maybe not a huge benefit of people's time.
Okay, thank you. So the motion to reconsider, Councilmember McCutcheon on reconsideration.
Yeah, let me see how to phrase this. Based on the comment you just made, all of you who have known me for how many ever years, my first priority is always the residents of Wildwood. And what we went through with the villages of Brightleaf and the impact it had on the areas that were already existing, subdivisions were existing around the areas of Brightleaf. That's the reason I do not think this bill should be reconsidered based on citizen input and density.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dodwell on reconsideration. Sure.
Mr. Vunich, based upon the discussions that planning and zoning has had, can you share the reasoning for having those two lots have a slightly different layout than the remaining lots?
So that actually relates to the motion to refer, that if the reconsideration passes, that'll be the first question Mr. Vintage will answer. Thanks for your patience. It gets a little complicated. I'm not trying to close people off. I just got to keep it by the book. Okay. On reconsideration.
Yeah. Relating to reconsideration specifically, I think that if for no other reason, it's worth reconsidering for the simple fact that we didn't have all the facts on the table. And we hadn't heard from all the speakers that wanted to speak, and he might not have heard it or filled out the card appropriately, but I think us having voted and moving something down the path in one direction without having had the full public hearing play out first, that alone would warrant the reconsideration.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Bros.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I guess what I'm wondering is that maybe in light of the further discussion, if there's a, Joe, if you have a specific point as to the reason, because, being on P and Z, I mean, it was discussed. So I guess to clarify a specific point is.
So that'll relate and be relevant if the reconsideration passes.
Okay. All right.
All right. The motion on the floor is to reconsider. An affirmative vote will bring back the motion to refer on the table. It'll be as if it was never voted on, and it'll be debated and voted again unless it's withdrawn. A no vote will leave the motion to refer in place. Show of hands, all in favor of the motion to reconsider, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 9 votes, correct? Did you count 9? I'm sorry. You're the clerk. You need to count the votes. So all in favor of the motion to reconsider, please raise your hand again. Okay, so the motion to reconsider passes. So the motion to refer is back on the floor, and we'll start with Councilmember Dodwell's question to you, Joe, on the motion to refer, which was.
Reduction in the value of homes if these two lots were put together slightly differently. It sounds like to me. Can you share the discussions at planning and zoning and the reasons why you chose as a committee to do and recommend what we have before us tonight?
Certainly, ma'am, I'll do my best. As it was explained to the department by the engineer of record, when the hammerhead was placed, the grades in that particular area were radically altered. The change in the grades required them to basically look at a different layout for the configuration of the home. The same was held true out on West Avenue in that southwest corner of the property, that additional third lot. And I think it's all being driven by the fact that if you look at Old Town Park, the new project Wesley Park and Stone Mill, topographically, they're very different than this site. And the topography, I think, is what's dictating the layout of the individual homes on the lot at 11 new lots with one existing being retained that fronts on the center avenue.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Sure. And I would just add something to that if I could. And Councilor Gross, we both said, as you know, on Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm not speaking for or against the motion to refer. Part of, I think, at least in what was in my mind, was the fact that, and to answer your question as to why this was approved, with a few of the homes not having, side entry garages. This is a PRD that gives, that decreases the lot size that is currently allowable for construction. And I'm not speaking for or against this particular development, but if you don't have a development that has larger homes, most of whom, vast majority of which have side entry garages, and the developer walks away from it, the next development that could come in with no discretion on the part of the Planning and Zoning Commission or this council would be something significantly smaller with front entry garages everywhere. And there is no ability. The only reason, in other words, we're having this debate is because this is part of a PRD, meaning an exception to the zoning rules. The zoning rules don't require front entry garages or these large residences. So, next question.
That's it for me.
Councilmember Bros, did you want to add anything to that?
Well,
I'm trying to stay
can
back.
I ask Joe my question again?
He has his hand up, so this would be a perfect opportunity. Sure, through the chair. What is your question to Councilmember Garatano?
No, I would just say, the specific point that you'd want to refer it back.
Councilmember Garatano.
Yeah, so I'll rehash why I do want to refer back here. And side entry garages, Mr. Vunich, can you clarify for us? Isn't that a requirement of the town center?
Actually, the way the town center neighborhood design standards describe it, it's now a combination of rear, side, and front.
Okay. Well, I know that's come up. So the reason why I want to refer it back is that we've had some ambiguity in this proposal. I've watched these meetings here. And again, I mentioned, we have seen no elevations. We do not know what types of homes. What you heard tonight is good information, like these are supposed to be expensive, but there's no picture. There's nothing at all that tells us that. The other reason why I think it's important that we refer it back to P&Z is because it is a PRD, just based on the votes of reconsideration, this would fail. A PRD requires a 2/3 majority to pass. And so if these votes remained as they did just when we talked about reconsideration, you wouldn't have enough votes to pass it in the first place when it came to first and second reading. And as a result, would most definitely fail. Hence why sending it back to P&Z means having them look at it. And the reason I say this is because Mr. Petruska speaking here tonight, that was me back in 2014. I was in a non-town center neighborhood, and adjacent to us was an 11-acre lot. The initial proposal that came to us was 62 homes. We came to council, and it came to council, and we were here, and we said why we didn't agree. And that council sent it back to P&Z and told the developer, work on it with the residents. We got 62 homes down to 38. So don't tell me you can't knock one or two off if we got 62 to 38. And I'm not saying this directed at you. So there is a way to make things work. When we got down to 38 after a series of meetings with the developer, we, the neighborhood, came in here and we supported the plan along with the developer, saying, we want this. This is a win-win for us, the neighbors. It is a win-win for the city. It's a win-win for the developer. We are all in agreement. Right now, I've got constituents here that are our constituents that have some issues still with this. And I think it's fair that we listen to them. Again, we're not killing this plan. All we're doing is asking the P&Z. Maybe the developer needs to have a meeting with those people and talk about potential options. That's what we did. And we came up with some good solution. So again, various reasons. Would not pass the PRD vote, even if we took this vote just based on the reconsideration totals. You need 11 votes. You only had 9. And I feel that, there's still a chance to make this work.
So just a point of information, we do have 2 council members not here tonight. So, Councilor Dodwell, anything new?
I just would ask that this particular council member work with those constituents to outline. I know they had a long letter. I know he talked a lot today, but what do they want to have these 2 houses removed and have the developer go even fewer? If he'd come in originally with 30 and we're down to 11, that's a better deal than you got the last time.
No, the 30 was never proposed. Sorry.
Okay.
That's
can I make a point of information? As you see stated here, it is not 30. 30 was one of the options presented to the Development and Zoning Review. They presented an option with 30 homes, and then they presented another option. The 30 back then was given the feedback that it wouldn't go. So this submittal, as you can see in the title, doesn't mention 30.
Councilmember Gross.
I guess, Joe, I'm hearing everything you say, but I guess if we boil it down, what would be your point to refer it back?
So I would ask.
And
that-
I'll just say that
Yeah.
what I've heard from the residents is the only thing I've heard that they're objecting to is front entry versus non-front
And I
entry.
think he's answered that, and that's his answer.
So is that why you want to refer it back as purely you want no front entry?
The residents have said that they want the
Okay, so
side
that's what you're
entry.
asking for.
And it's consistent with the 3 neighborhoods that are going to be surrounding it.
Okay, and then Joe, if I understand from you, it's not a zoning requirement that they all be not front entry.
That's correct, sir. With the update of the town center plan, we now allow front, side, and rear entry garages.
Okay, so the point to refer it back is to apply a stricter, to apply a restriction to this property that's not within our zoning.
Well, but it could be done because it's a PRD. That's the only reason it can be done.
Okay.
And I would say if
Joe,
there,
Council.
sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, I just want to understand, so you want to send it back specifically relating to the front entry
Yes.
garage?
Yes. Councilmember Edens, anything new?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So I mean, I'm glad we can continue to have discussion on this because this is a motion to prepare legislation. So there's other opportunities to pass this or kill this in the future, and opportunities for other discussion at the council level, in addition to if it would pass and go back to the committee. So I think that is worth stating. And then I had wondered as well about the front elevations. Did the developer not provide them at the moment because they want the PRD first, and then they'll have that when they go through, because they still have to go through the architectural review board, right? Because they're part of town center. So
So what's your question, Councilmember Edens, exactly?
the timing of the front elevations and when those would
And whether
come.
they would go to the ARB, City Attorney Young or Joe, would they go to ARB?
Yes, as part of the proposed conditions, architectural review is required by our board. But I would just emphasize with the mayor's permission, Planning and Zoning Commission recognized that not only consistency in lot size and obviously the orientation of garage doors was important to everyone, but also the architecture. We have all the same requirements that are in Stone Mill, Wesley Park, Old Town Park as part of the conditions here. Hardy board siding or fiber cement siding with backer board, upgraded shingles, et cetera, et cetera. So the intent was not to provide a lesser product, at least in terms of architectural materials. Just to kind of give you a real quick background, Mr. Stegman's friends with Leon Schumpler. Leon wants to sell the lot. Mr. Stegman agreed to try to rezone the lot so he could purchase it. That's why there's no developer. I mean, a builder, so to speak.
Okay, that makes.
The other thing I would mention in
more
terms of
sense,
Joe's
yeah.
answer to your question, Councilmember Edens, is regardless of what ARB does relative to elevations, based on recent legislation this council passed,
Mhm.
those decisions are reviewable by this council.
Right. I was just thinking that it would have alleviated, maybe not alleviate, but if it just addressed some of the concerns of the public or
That ship sailed.
or us as well, because sometimes people need something tangible they can see to understand, is this front entry truly devastating and so out of character, or is this something that we can live with because it's not legally mandated? And without having that, sometimes I think that's hard for people to process. And so I think if we're in this situation in the future, the individual proposing that might be a good suggestion, is to get it out earlier, even if it's not the final product, because I think it helps with communicating to the public and to ourselves.
Councilmember Farmer, anything new? We've had a lot of discussion on the motion. This is a motion to refer back. Anything?
I guess maybe mine is just a question in terms of process, because I've only been through a handful of these things so far.
Okay.
So I think it's great that our speaker is friends with the lady that's selling the land or whatever, but I mean, is it normal for a subdivision to go through P&Z without any indication of what is actually being built there other than a handful of lots? Is that a normal thing?
So I think I don't recall from the record at P and Z. I mean, there's been statements, several statements that there were no elevations. I can't tell you where there were.
I mean,
or what. What I can say is that that question was asked, and I believe I actually asked the question at one point about what are these going to look like. And if they weren't there, my assumption is the reason that the elevations weren't there is because of the representative lots that are already in existence in and around this as to what it's going to look like. So it wasn't an issue of P and Z not having, or at least me, I can safely tell you when I voted the way I did, I had a good understanding of what I was voting on and how it was going to look. So, and I would argue having a house already built helps me better than the drawing of it. So
that part I understand, but I mean, this is a 108-page document, and there isn't even a reference to how large these houses are going to be.
Actually, there is a footprint depicted on the preliminary development plan, as I recall.
Sorry, you've already testified. We can't legally do that. So. Okay, sorry.
See if we can pull it.
While we're doing that, Councilmember Hopper, anything new on the motion to refer back?
I was just going to ask a clarifying question. So I guess to circle back a little bit to the higher level piece of this. So we have the question or concern of referring back is on the garages, right?
Yes.
And the garages are front facing. And did I understand correctly that it's two of the houses, like all the houses except for two will have side facing and two will have one of the three garages facing front? So it's two houses with two garages facing front. Is that right?
Just a second. Mr. Vinich, would you please ask that question?
I apologize.
It's fine. So I'm just, again, point of clarification of the reasoning to refer this back. So they said the overall objection was that the garages should all be side facing in relation to what the adjoining neighborhoods would have looked. But in the planning for this, it is two houses all that would have one of their garages front facing. All the other homes would have side facing garages. Is that correct?
It's three.
Three houses would have a front facing out of the 11 that would go in.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Councilmember Galani, you had raised your hand earlier. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of torn. But my question is related to Councilmember Edens brought this up earlier. I mean, like we're arguing and debating this whole process as if this moves forward tonight, that they're just going to start building next week or something. To my understanding, if this moves forward, there's still multiple layers of approvals that have to happen, which will involve the council, where things can be discussed, elevations can be reviewed. My question is, and with all due respect to Councilmember Gaetano and Mr. Petruska and other members of Ward 8 that I represent, I do also feel that there is a certain point where, we can go too far with a potential developer. I mean, at the end of the day, we want development to happen in Wildwood. We need development to happen in Wildwood. And you guys might not realize this, but I hear it all the time out there, is that we are known and we have a reputation of being one of the most difficult municipalities in St. Louis County to work with when it comes to developers. And we put people through the ringer. They spend thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars doing these plans. They go to planning and zoning, they come back, they go to architectural review, they come back. And then we kick it back to them over the blades of grass that they're planning on growing being too short or long or the wrong color or whatever it is. So I do feel like, and to the gentleman, Mr. Stegman, that was here earlier, having been a council member in Wildwood himself at one point, understands, and I feel for the residents, because we want every single resident constituent to be happy with what the outcome is and what's being built. But I think at a certain point in time, we got to be able to work with folks, and every single person isn't always going to be 100% happy. So I want to make sure we extend it and do whatever we can to make sure that we get this as right as we can. But once again, we can't make our line in the sand perfection, because we're never going to get there. And to the mayor's point earlier, be careful what we wish for, right? Because we could end up with a development that is unhappy for many more folks than who are now. So that's my only point there. And I know it probably makes some people upset and some people happy, but I just, that's just the way I feel.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a lot of discussion on this. Council members, seeing no further hands, the motion on the floor, which was brought back with the motion to reconsider, is a motion to refer. And given that the motion to reconsider passed, that means that this will be a fresh vote as if the first vote didn't happen. And we're going to do a roll call.
Point of information for clarity, so everyone knows. We were voting on basically the motion I made before.
Correct.
So if the motion passes, it would go back to the
Correct.
planning and
Yep,
zoning for
that's correct.
review.
And thank
Okay.
you for that information. Okay, so a yes vote is to refer, just like it was earlier. A no vote is to not refer. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Nian,
No.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
No.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Gross,
No.
Councilmember Edens,
No.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
No.
Councilmember Dodwell,
No.
Councilmember Bertolino,
No.
Councilmember Hopper,
No.
Councilmember Galani,
No.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion to refer, the motion to refer fails 9-5. So now you were asking if the council would make a motion for the preparation of legislation. Is that correct, Mr. Vintage? Does anyone want to make a motion to prepare legislation consistent made by, with what was presented, made by Councilmember Dodwell? Is there a second? Second to the motion to have legislation prepared, seconded by Councilmember Brost. Would presumably be the same discussion we had on the motion to refer. Seeing no further hands, roll call vote, please, on the motion to have legislation prepared consistent with the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Councilmember Farmer,
No.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
No.
Councilmember Rambo,
I'm not clear on the yes or no.
The yes vote would be to have legislation prepared to affect the planned residential overlay district that the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
No.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Quick question.
Sure.
Just to further reiterate, to prepare this legislation, it will have more conversation and discussion and for approvals.
At a minimum, 2 readings from this council and other things from ARB. Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
No.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Okay, the motion to have legislation prepared passes. So that will be drafted and presented to the council at its next meeting. Lastly, PZ 32-21 Grover Heights. Ms. Eldridge, would you please read that?
PZ 32-21 Grover Heights, Lot 7A, care of Mike Whalen, Whalen Custom Homes, 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood, Missouri 63122. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for a 0.69 acre parcel of ground, 3 lots of record that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located at the southwest corner of Manchester Road and East Avenue, street addresses 17014 and 17016 Manchester Road, St. Louis County, locator numbers 24V 510452 and 24V 510188. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, support of 1 single-family dwelling on an individual lot of record.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, anything further you want to mention about PZ 32-21?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as with the previous 2 items, the Planning and Zoning Commission is presenting to you its letter of recommendation regarding the rezoning request. This would take 3 legal non-conforming lots of record, combine them and allow 1 single-family dwelling to be constructed upon it. After public comment, the department's available for any questions or comments.
And you would also ask for legislation to be prepared if the council wishes on this one.
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any speaker cards, Ms. Eldridge?
No.
Anyone on Zoom for this item, Mr. Newberry? All right, thank you. Any questions from the council relative to this PZ 32-21, or is there a motion to have legislation prepared? Councilmember Edens. You'll make the motion to have legislation prepared, seconded by Councilmember Brost. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. So that concludes our 3 public comments. Thanks to everyone for your patience and comments as we dealt with stacked motions on some very emotional issues. Moving next into second readings. Obviously, these have already been through first by definition, and we have 3, 2706, 2707, and 2708. Would there be any objection from the council in having these 3 handled in tandem to expedite the meeting this evening? All right, seeing none. Bill 2706 is in 2707 and 2708 are before the council for final passage. They concern wards 8, 1, 3, and 5. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bills? Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read bills 2706, 2707, and 2708.
Bill number 2706, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, approving a change in zoning from the R1 1-acre residence district with a conditional use permit CUP to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for a 1.4 acre tract of land that is located on the southeast corner of Center Avenue and Bordeaux Walkway, second reading. Bill number 2707, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city consultant agreement with HR Green Incorporated to complete a traffic study of State Route 109 from State Route BA South to Clayton Road, which will evaluate and recommend future improvements to the corridor, second reading. Bill number 2708, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the city with Precision Concrete Cutting LLC for sidewalk repairs on residential streets within Garden Valley Farms, Oak Ridge Trails, and West Hampton Woods subdivision, second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Benish. Anything further you want to mention on Bill 2706?
No, sir, but the department's available for any comments or questions.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions for Mr. Vinich on Bill 2706? All right, seeing none, Mr. Brown, anything further you want to mention on Bills 2707 and 2708?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I have nothing further, but I'm available for any questions from the council.
Any questions for Rick Brown? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bills 2706, 2707, and 2708.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
All right, the bills pass. Moving into first readings, the first is Bill 2709. It's before the council and it concerns Ward 4. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Nyan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Councilmember Flasher is opposed. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2709.
Bill 2709, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending the boundary of the Special Circumstances Overlay District, SCOD, by including therein a single legal lot of record, being identified herein as 162 Strucker Road, with said action being consistent with the letter of recommendation completed and submitted by the Planning and Zoning Commission dated April 4th, 2022, first reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vinich. Anything further to mention relative to Bill 2709?
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, a public hearing was held on this matter. At the conclusion of the hearing, the City Council authorized the preparation of legislation. Mr. Young, Mr. Cross, and I and others are available for any comments or questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Councilmember Bertolino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After all the discussion today and in previous meetings, I'd like to move that we postpone this legislation until the next regular meeting. And my reasoning is that we put this SOC together It's first reading, I know,
Okay.
right? I can postpone to the next one.
Well, it's already going postponed to the next meeting.
But the next meeting will be the second.
Correct.
I don't want to have a first reading.
We don't have a motion on the table. There have to be a motion on the table to postpone.
I thought I just made that.
No, but what I mean is, there's you postpone motions. So there has to be a motion that you want to have postponed. So right now, there's nothing on the next meeting agenda. Or there's nothing to postpone at this point, is my point.
I made the motion to read it, and you can make the motion to postpone.
The motion to read first was voted upon. So, Councilor Flasher, so the motion to read was voted, has already been voted upon. If it were reconsidered, then the motion to first read could be postponed because that would be a motion on the floor. So to the city attorney's point about having a motion, you have to have a motion to postpone or a motion to be postponed. That would be the motion for first reading. That motion has already been voted upon, but if your motion could be to reconsider, and if that then comes back to the table successfully because the motion to reconsider passes, then you could make a motion to postpone that motion. So would you like to make a motion to
reconsider?
Okay, so we have a motion to reconsider and there's second by Councilmember Flasher. Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? Only on the motion to reconsider will take a majority vote to pass. See no discussion on the, yes, Councilmember
I was
Bertolini.
going to make a comment on why I would do that.
Sure, go ahead.
If it's all right. The original idea behind the SOCD was, in my opinion, okay, the goal was to protect our residents from potential harm. I mean, we were looking out for our residents because we had resident after resident over the years come before us and say, this place is contaminated, it's hurting us, and so on and so forth. And we wanted to protect them. But the second thing was we wanted to convey accurate information to future potential landowners so that they would not be harmed. I don't feel personally at this point on this particular piece of property, this 162, that I could stand before a potential new buyer in the future and say, here's the problem with this property, here's what's wrong with it, and you need to be aware. Okay. Now, the other thing was that I was a little stunned by the calculations presented tonight, Joe, about the costs of the fees, et cetera, et cetera. I would like, before I vote on this thing again, I'd like to have these numbers either, validated or invalidated as to, are they accurate or not accurate? Okay, that weighs on me a lot because I don't think we ever intended to put up onerous barriers for landowners to say, no, you can never buy this property because it's going to cost you $40,000 in fees. But that was never the intent. That's my feedback.
Okay, so we have the motion to reconsider, and that's his reasoning for it. Any further discussion on the motion to reconsider, not the merits of the SCODE or anything else, on the motion to reconsider? Well, I'll let you know if you want to state it. Go ahead.
Yes, it was my understanding that these folks could undertake any of the projects that they demonstrated in their documentation without spending $10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'd like clarification on that. Is it true that they would have to spend all these funds to get a mailbox built?
So that actually is going to relate more to the merits of the first reading than reconsider. Okay, any further discussion on reconsideration? That is, in reconsideration, I want to talk about it again. That's all this is. I want to talk about it again. So is there anyone who wants to say anything about talking about it again? All right, seeing none, we'll do a show of hands. All in favor of the motion to reconsider, please say aye. Or I'm sorry, raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Aye.
I know I made a mistake. 1, 2, 9. So the motion to reconsider passes by 9 votes. Now, the question has been raised, and you can answer it tonight or later if you don't know the answer, of course, Mr. Vintage, about the fees that were mentioned earlier by some of the speakers. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I don't think there's any other 2 people in the room other than Mr. Young, our city attorney, and I that have worked with this. And our point to all of you throughout this process is this is a tool for new development. And if I'm incorrect, Mr. Young, correct me now. And so from the perspective of the department, we've already put a list together of just general maintenance things that the Marquards can do on the property.
Mr. Marquardt,
That's exactly what I thought. It's to prohibit any new structures, new developments, subdivisions, those kinds of things without the proper investigation. But as of right now, the home can be maintained and improved and added on to and those kinds of things without.
Mr. Marquardt, we respect the hearings and the rules in our city, and it does not include yelling from the audience. So please respect that.
So is that a reasonable assumption?
There are certain activities that would disturb the soil that would require greater scrutiny. I don't know if it would trigger this code. I can't say that. If this is postponed, certainly I will review the circumstances that were described by Mr. Marquardt in his presentation and give you a response to each of them.
Councilmember Flasher. And so now, just for clarification, the motion for second reading or for first reading is what's on the floor for debate at the council, i.e. whether to have this thing read tonight or postpone. So your motion to postpone earlier, Councilmember Bertolino, if you want to make it, would now be in order. Councilmember Flasher.
Okay, my biggest thing that stuck out to me from all the speaking and stuff, I don't know if it's true, and I'm hoping you guys can tell me if it's true. Have they made an effort to meet with you and talk to you guys about what it is needs to be done? And if so, are we honoring that, or are we, I mean, why have they not been able to have that meeting? And maybe that's a Mr. Young question, I don't know. And maybe they haven't, I don't know, but they've told us here that they've asked to meet with you guys to talk about why there's concerns, and is there a reason that that meeting hasn't been able to happen for them?
To fully answer that question, we would need to go into closed session.
Okay.
Councilmember Farmer.
I would like to second Councilmember Bertolino's motion.
I haven't heard it yet, but I think he's about getting ready to do it. Councilmember Bertolino.
Thank you. I'd like to make that motion
To refer to the next council meeting,
Yes.
okay, or to postpone rather to the next council meeting. And the purpose specifically for postponement is?
to garner information that was presented tonight and that Joe has already said that he's been.
Okay. And we have a second in waiting from Councilmember Farmer. And so now the discussion is on the motion to postpone to the next council meeting, the first reading, the motion for first reading. Is there any discussion on the motion to postpone? Seeing none, all in favor, Councilmember Edens.
On the merits of it, yes, because I agree with the intent you asked, if this was the intent, if not to be corrected. And the intent was always that a homeowner could do, regular maintenance, but if serious disturbance
So
occurred.
this is only on postponement, not on merits of whether what he's going to show us.
I was looping back around about.
Okay.
So the accusation has been made that that's not the case. And so the merits of postponing is it does give a little bit more time for review and accuracy, because some of the things in here I would consider closer to regular maintenance, but there's other things that, if I did it myself, regardless of an SCOD, I would need a permit for, right? So there's lots of examples of that. And so when you come back with that information, it would be helpful if it's something that just requires a permit in general. It wasn't an example used, but let's say it's just a pool. What would the cost of that be with or without an SCOD?
Thank you for looping that back around.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because I was getting there.
Anything further on motion to postpone? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to postpone to the next council meeting for the purpose stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That takes us to Bill 2710 before the council, also for first reading, and it concerns Ward 4. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember. Sure.
Can I make a motion to postpone that as well to next week?
Once we have a motion for first reading, we can do that.
Okay, then I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion for first reading. Is there a second to the motion for first reading made by Councilmember Dodwell? And
Now do I make the motion to
You can make a
postpone?
motion.
I will now make the motion to postpone to the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion for the same reason, I'm assuming, correct? To
Correct.
postpone Bill 2710 to the next council meeting. Councilor Dodwell?
I would like to second that motion.
Oh, I thought we had a second. My apology, Councilmember Dodwell seconds. Okay, I forgot to ask for that. So we do have a second from Councilmember Dodwell. Thank you for keeping me in line there. Okay, any discussion on the motion to postpone Bill 2710 to the next council meeting for the same purpose? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving next to Bill 2711, it's before the council for first reading, concerns Ward 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Garetano, second by Councilmember Galani. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2711.
Bill number 2711, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute 19 quitclaim deeds from holders of rights to Center Avenue, a private right-of-way, which relinquishes any claim thereto in the future and thereby allows the city of Wildwood to accept this street for public maintenance forever. First reading.
Thank you. Mr. Benich, anything you would like to mention further relative to Bill 2711?
I'd just like to thank those on city council and our city attorney, city administrator, and the mayor for assistance in getting the 19 quitclaim deeds to you tonight. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Do you want a second reading on this?
Mr. Young and I had a conversation, and the sooner we record these, the better off. So yes, please.
Okay, Councilor Garetano, you make a motion for second reading? Yes. Okay, we have a motion for second reading and seconded by Councilmember Edens. Since this is reading 2 times in one evening, one council meeting, that would take a 2/3 supermajority vote. We'll try it by hands first, or I'm sorry, by voice vote first, see where that gets us. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the 2/3 supermajority has been met. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2711 a second time.
Bill number 2711, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute 19 quitclaim deeds from holders of rights to Center Avenue, a private right-of-way, which relinquishes any claim thereto in the future and thereby allows the city of Wildwood to accept the street for public maintenance forever. Second reading.
Okay, I'm assuming there's nothing further from Mr. Benich or any questions. Anyone want to say anything further relative to Bill 2711 before we have a final vote of the council? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call roll of the council for final vote and passage of Bill 2711.
Councilmember Rambo. Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Garetano.
Aye.
Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Rottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Okay, the bill passes. Moving next to, we have several bills that none of which have any monetary implication. These are for first reading. Bill 2712 relates to a successor development agreement, Ward 6. All of these relate to Ward 6, actually, except Bill 2715, I'll get to in a moment. 2713, a lot split, also, as I said, Ward 6. 2714, reauthorization of minor subdivision plat, Ward 6. 2715, a boundary adjustment in Ward 3. And finally, back to Ward 6, Bill 2716, another boundary adjustment. Would there be any objection to reading these 5 bills in handling them in tandem? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2712, 2713, 2714, 2715, and 2716.
Did we have we didn't have a motion or a second?
I took that by consensus, but that's okay. Is there a motion for the first reading of all 5 bills made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Rambo? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Ms. Eldridge, please read the 5 bills.
Bill number 2712, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a successor developer agreement, including an accompanying cash deposit with the estates at Deer Hollow Subdivisions Homeowners Association for the release of certain funds from the defaulted escrow accounts that are associated with this residential subdivision, thereby allowing for the city's reimbursement to this entity for its completion of street improvements as shown on the approved improvement plans thereon. First reading. Bill number 2713, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, approving a lot split plat for Crime Camp Farm, which also includes the dedication of a variable with public right-of-way area to the city of Wildwood for public use forever, thereby replacing the currently referenced as traveled characterization of it. First reading. Bill number 2714, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a minor subdivision plat of a 29.57 acre parcel of ground that is located in the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 30, township 44 north, range 3 east of the 5th principal meridian, located at the terminus of Chateau Lane and to be hereafter known as Chateau Forest Subdivision. First reading. Bill number 2715, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a boundary adjustment plat between two lots that are identified as a survey located in the southeast quarter of the northwest quarter and the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 25, township 44 north, range 3 east, located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Shepherd Road and Selenrique Lane, and to be hereafter known as the 18109 Selenrique Lane and 1611 Shepherd Road Boundary Adjustment Plat. First reading. Bill number 2716, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a boundary adjustment plat between two properties under the same ownership to address a previous encroachment onto St. Louis County, Missouri Park property, all of which are part of U.S. Survey 2032, Section 15, and also being a portion of Township 44 North, Range 3 East, St. Louis County, Missouri, and more specifically situated at the terminus of Stones Throw Drive, to be hereafter known as Lot Consolidation Plat of Lot 4, Stones Throw Equestrian Estates, Plat Book 346, page 395, first reading.
Thank you. Joe, other than request for second reading, which I know we've discussed, do you have anything you want to mention relative to Bill 2712, 2713, 2714, 2715, or 2716?
Yes, Mr. Bear, very quickly on 2712, the homeowners association did a bidding process for the final coat of asphalt on their network of private streets. They have been waiting on the process to allow for the city to complete the successor developer agreement. And their intent is to sign the contract tomorrow if all goes well. In regards to 2714, 2715, and 2716, these are reauthorizations of subdivision action. What we're finding is that the recorder of deeds, the utilities, and if lien holders are out state and the Mylar must be sent to them for signature, the 60-day window for recording isn't sufficient. So that's why they're before you tonight.
Right. So these have previously been approved, I believe. And actually, just as an FYI, we had some communication among Steve, Joe, and I today. There may be legislation that comes to the next council meeting to extend that window so we don't have this problem again with in other words, the window that allows for more time to record these things. In any event, I believe it's Mr. Vinich's wish that bills 2712, 2714, 2715, and 2716 have a second reading. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but not bill 2713.
That's a fresh one, so I wasn't expecting a second reading there.
Would you like it?
Very much so, sir.
Okay, so we have a motion for second reading made by Councilmember Farmer for these 5 bills. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Rambo from Ward 6. As you know, it will take a 2/3 vote, supermajority for reasons we just discussed moments ago. We'll try a voice vote, see where that goes. All in favor of the motion for second reading of the 5 bills, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read bills 2712, 2713, 2714, 2715, and 2716 a second time.
Bill number 2712, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a successor developer agreement, including an accompanying cash deposit with the estates at Deer Hollow Subdivisions Homeowners Association for the release of certain funds from the defaulted escrow accounts that are associated with this residential subdivision, thereby allowing for the city's reimbursement to this entity for its completion of street improvements as shown on the approved improvement plans thereon. Second reading. Bill number 2713, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, approving a lot split plat for Crime Camp Farm, which also includes the dedication of a variable width public right-of-way area to the city of Wildwood for public use forever, thereby replacing the currently referenced as traveled characterization of it. Second reading. Bill number 2714, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a minor subdivision plat of a 29.57 acre parcel of ground that is located in the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 30, township 44 north, range 3 east of the 5th principal meridian, located at the terminus of Chateau Lane and to be hereafter known as Chateau 4 subdivision. Second reading. Bill number 2715, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a boundary adjustment plat between two lots that are identified as a survey located in the southeast quarter of the northwest quarter and the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of section 25, township 44 north, range 3 east, located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Shepherd Road and Sellenrink Lane, and to be hereafter known as the 18109 Sellenrink Lane and 1611 Shepherd Road boundary adjustment plat. Second reading. Bill number 2716, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing a boundary adjustment plat between two properties under the same ownership to address a previous encroachment onto St. Louis County, Missouri Park property, all of which are part of U.S. Survey 2032, Section 15, and also being a portion of Township 44 North, Range 3 East, St. Louis County, Missouri, and more specifically situated at the terminus of Stones Throw Drive, to be hereafter known as Lot Consolidation Plat of Lot 4, Stones Throw Equestrian Estates, Plat Book 346, page 395, second reading.
Thank you. All right, I'm assuming there are no further questions or comments relative to the 5 bills. Fair statement. Okay, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2712, 2713, 2714, 2715, and 2716.
Councilmember Flasher?
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano?
Yes.
Councilmember Bros?
Yes.
Councilmember Edens?
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper?
Yes.
Councilmember Galani?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Nian?
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer?
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon?
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yes.
All right, excellent. The bills have passed. Finally, Bill 2717 is before the council for first reading. It concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Ward 1, made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Brost. All in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2717.
Bill number 2717, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city consultant agreement with CB Engineering Incorporated, doing business as Cochran, to complete preliminary plans to replace structure 3-107 on Wild Horse Creek Road in the city. First reading.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, anything further you want to mention relative to the information the council's received on this one?
I have nothing further, Mayor Bowlen. I would respectfully ask for consideration of 2 readings tonight, given the nature of this project and the relative importance for public safety, if that's possible.
All right. Councilmember Clark.
I would move to go ahead with the second reading.
Okay, we have a
as well.
motion for second reading, seconded by Councilmember Brost. 2/3 supermajority. Any discussion on the motion for second reading? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion for second reading this evening, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2717 a second time.
Bill number 2717, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city consultant agreement with CB Engineering Incorporated, doing business as Cochran, to complete preliminary plans to replace structure 3-107 on Wild Horse Creek Road in the city. Second reading.
Thank you. Any questions to Rick or any comments on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll. I'm sorry, Councilmember Clark.
My question is, how soon can we get this done? The plans drawn up.
Mr. Brown.
That's a good question. and keep in mind, this is just a preliminary plan. There would presumably be another contract for final design following this one. I'm going to reference the agreement. I believe we gave them until August to complete the work under this agreement. I would like to see that they get it done more rapidly than that if possible, but I would think we would have a recommendation and for the replacement structure to you for the August meeting for certain.
Okay. All right, Councilor Ottenberg.
But what exactly is the structure?
Yeah.
Mr. Brown, can you, in a nutshell, tell the council what the structure is?
Well, certainly it's a stormwater box culvert. It drains a tributary of Wild Horse Creek underneath Wild Horse Creek Road. It's basically about 11.5 feet in length and about 7 feet in height. It's an old structure. It's a stone masonry structure, which you don't see very often. We anticipate that could be on the order of 90 years or more old.
All right, perfect. I just realized it was the one we discussed earlier this evening, so thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2717.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes,
Councilmember Bertolino,
he'll be back in a minute.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani. Yes. Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo. Yes. Councilmember Flasher.
Yes. All right, the bill passes. Finally, moving to the consent agenda, we have the following four things. The first is approval from minutes from the last council meeting in May for the work session and the regular meeting. Second is approval of expenditures, which you've been provided with. Third is the reappointment of Ms. Stevens, who's with us this evening and spoke earlier, to our Historic Preservation Commission. And last is Resolution 2022-12, which relates to an 11,000 agreement with HR Green to finalize the design plans for the new sidewalk on State Route 109 from Manchester to south of Viola Gill Lane. I thought that these might all work well for the consent agenda. If anyone objects, we can separate them. So if you make a motion to approve the consent agenda, you will be approving all, and it passes, you'll be approving all four. Councilmember Garitano makes the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Ottenberg. Any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Clark.
I had one issue with the minutes.
Okay, what is that?
Under the public comments for the aquaculture issue, it's I don't know the wording, but Nancy Fisher, in my opinion, did not speak for or in opposition of the removal of the need for the CUP in regards to the aquaculture. She spoke on the testing of the motors that could potentially cause a noise, an annoying sound, the discrete tone that is on our code, as well as the decibel, but the decibels weren't in question. It was the discrete noise, and she spoke on the discrete noise, not specifically on the CUP, as I remember.
Do you recall specifically?
Generally, when people fill out public comment cards, I basically summarize what they put on the comment card in the minutes.
Okay.
So I would have probably marked it that way, but graded on our speaker cards, it does have you check for or against. So that's probably where I got that.
Okay.
From.
So you're saying on the speaker card, she said she checked against. Is that correct?
Yeah, she would have checked something on the speaker card. I'd have to double check it to be certain.
Okay, I just, Mr. Young had said, we need to make sure that the minutes are accurate, and that was very important. So I just wanted to mention that I did not think she spoke for or against that. And if she checked it on the comment card, maybe she meant to.
if it was reflected on the comment cord, that it's accurately reported in the minutes.
Okay. Any other comments on the minute? Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded to approve the consent agenda, the 4 items as presented. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the consent agenda is approved as presented. That takes us to miscellaneous and then adjournment. I just want to mention, I haven't had a chance to talk with our city attorney, I'm sorry, our city administrator yet, relative to our June meeting, but if it looks like we need to meet, we will. We'll let you know ASAP. If we don't, then we're not going to take you and our residents' time. Is that fair? Okay. Councilmember Edens.
Yes, about future meetings. I have a question. So before the ballot measure got passed, there was a discussion about changing meeting times and whether or not it would occur. And I was left with the understanding that it would not occur, or at least it wouldn't occur without discussion. And so going forward, what meeting time can I expect? I mean, is it 5:30 from now on and then 6:30? Are we going back to 7? I'm just trying to plan and I don't know what to plan for.
Okay, good question.
And I don't know why it changed.
Well, it changed for a couple of reasons. One, our voters gave us the ability to do that, but principally it changed because one, during the summer months, I think people like to sort of get their business done and get home. Two, I had a lot of discussions with different members of the council. They all, I don't know if I talked to you about it, apparently I didn't, but they seemed okay with that. But if you're not, my thought would be, we can talk about it. My thought would be to have it at 5:30 at least through up into the fall and kind of see where we are.
And then go from there.
But yeah, so my recommendation would be to keep it at 5:30, but if you have an objection to that, we can talk.
No, I just didn't know because we didn't have this conversation. So I didn't know if some of the other individuals that have tighter work shifts, if they're comfortable. And I just wanted to know if because what I'm seeing is, and you can see it in the last couple of minutes, we don't have everybody, walking in right at 5:30 for that work session because I would assume that's because of the time change. So
yeah, we've had it happen. We've had 2 of these at 5:30. I think we had one that was a minute late. I think I would suggest we kind of see where it goes. I don't think 2 is a trend make. I haven't noticed anyone being terribly late for that, but
okay.
And no one's spoken in opposition.
Yeah, we just need to have discussions to plan in the future.
Councilor Garetano.
Happy to make a motion to adjourn if that's okay.
Motion to adjourn by Councilor Garetano, second. Sure, go ahead.
Earlier, regarding economic development, I guess it will fall under, but training restaurant over my shucks. Getting it closing. And I guess there's been some different reasons that were floating around. One retiring, one being my wife is there. There's something raised. My point was I didn't know Mr. Frost was good information or anything about the agency. Back every time I've ever been there, seeing them, it's really good food. That plaza is pretty.
Yeah, it's not a real estate tax. We don't have one. Do you have any information on this, Mr. Cross, or do you want to investigate it and let us know?
At the current time, I don't have any information, but I'm happy to go by and meet with the owner and see if I can find out some information, and I'll do that this week.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Did our new economic development individual start today, or?
I'm sorry? Did what?
The economic development person that the city administrator said he had hired at the last meeting.
Has he started?
He starts tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow. Any other questions, comments? Councilor Rambo.
Yeah, real quickly, when will we get the internet rollout plan? I get questions daily on who's going to be picked up, when it's going to be picked up, et cetera, and it's been a long time. So do you have an update on that?
City administrator.
Yeah, I'm asking Steve. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just have to get permission from the mayor to respond. Yes, we can give you an update. It's not a complete update, but I will provide what Mr. Young and I have been doing diligently for the last weeks and months. in terms of trying to move this forward. At the present time, last week, or at the end of the week prior, we had a conversation with Spectrum. And we have been trying to get, as you all know, and as I've said in my reports, a design plan. And a design plan is spelled out in the agreement that we have with Spectrum. They have given us bits and pieces of information, none of which meet what Mr. Young and I believe and is a design plan. Bottom line is this, they have told us that they will be bringing a line up through Eureka into the southern part of Wildwood. And they then will they have identified 3 areas along 109 where they will start construction. And that construction should be completed, the construction part, somewhere in the 4 to 5 months range from now. It is not a complete design plan. It only addresses that area. What I'm going to do, and we literally just learned this in the last week. I will identify which subdivisions are included in these 3 colored areas that they gave us in a map. So we're going to tell you what the subdivisions are. That's not a complete design plan. It doesn't tell us everything that's going on in the city of Wildwood. And we have our first construction meeting this Friday. We will be having bi-weekly construction meetings on every other Friday. The first one would be this Friday. I attempted to call the gentleman at Spectrum today to find out, because I'm going at it from me talking to the construction people and the executives. John Young is going at it from the point of talking to their attorney. Both of us trying to get to the same answer, which is we need a complete and total subdivision by subdivision, house by house, now not only about phase 1, but then additionally about phase 2, which are all the additional homes and subdivisions that we have discussed to basically cover all of Wildwood. So we have a partial answer, a partial plan of what they're doing, but they have not given us a complete plan.
Okay.
Now,
if I can.
Go ahead.
And can I take the privilege of the chair for a moment?
Absolutely, sure, yeah.
They've had long enough. And this needs to just get done. And I'm not saying that as criticism of you. I'm saying that FYI, hopefully they're watching. I'm sure our residents are. It has been many months. And so what I would suggest is if our city attorney needs to have more candid discussions with them about this, if I need to have more candid discussions with them about it, I'm happy to do that. But our residents simply cannot wait any longer for this plan.
Mr. Young and I have had those exact conversations with Spectrum, and we plan to do more of that. There's language in the agreement that has to do with completion dates, has to do with payment schedules and so forth. Mr. Young and I are quite aware of what, and we're to the point now, and I'm choosing my words very carefully because some of this discussion actually would need to take place in a closed session. But there are remedies that the city has, but we have to talk about them at some point in time.
Yeah. So, Councilor Rambo.
We were led to understand by Spectrum and those folks that they would complete their project 2 years after the signature date, which sort of moved from December 23rd to January 23rd. We haven't even seen a plan yet, and now we're talking 4 or 5 months down the road. So it's going to be the better part of a year before they've even deployed much of anything. And if we have a 2-year date, I'd kind of like to know when that clock actually started and when to tell people, hey, you'll have service.
The date, the 2-year date started from the date of execution of that contract. That was it. That was in the end of December. What they have said to us, because you all may have recalled me saying that initially they told us they were going to be coming in the in the western, they were gonna bring a line. Okay, well, they changed that. They re-looked at the plan and they told Mr. Young and I that they're gonna come up through Eureka because they can get it done faster than the 2 years. So they looked at it things differently. So they're still telling us today, they're gonna get it done actually sooner than the 24 months
Yeah.
that's in the agreement.
And I'm not looking to badger Charter, or I'm sorry, Spectrum either, but as a practical matter, and I just confirmed this with the city attorney, monies will not be transferred until the plan is in place.
I just want to add, there are two things that trigger the payment from the city to Spectrum. Number one, a design plan. In the absence of that, if that isn't completed, that's one trigger. The other trigger is when homes are passed and able to get serviced, then every 10% of those homes, the 2,025 homes, after a 10%. So if they haven't done that, then the city is not going to pay.
Again, until we see the plan. Anything further, Councilor Edens?
Yes, I'm glad to hear that they don't have a giant check in their hands yet, and I appreciate your last email with me, Mr. Cross. And unfortunately, Councilmember Bartoni isn't able to make it tonight. And I did have residents contact me again this evening that they thought they were going to make it. And while Mayor Bowlen, I appreciate your professionalism that you don't want to disparage Charter, I'll do it. You know what? You tell them from Ward 2 in your next meeting that my residents are furious because I can't give them an answer if and when they will be included. And the intent was not to leave those residents that are entirely on hotspots behind. And that's not good enough for the city and it's not good enough for my residents.
And there is no intent to leave them behind.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm at the metaphorical pitchfork and torch feeling at this point. And so I'm not feeling nice about it. So, I mean, you give it to them.
Councilmember Clark, anything new?
Yes, as you mentioned, meeting every other week. And in my opinion, from an engineering standpoint, I've had a lot of bosses and they would not allow that. I would have to give them an update every week. It's not at all out of the question for them to come up with a plan within this time frame and have it charts and graphs and everything for you prepared, not just a map that has colored areas. They need to have a downtown engineering. Of course, the financial part has to have a financial part, and the aesthetics and the location we're going has to, but they need to have an engineering development plan, and we do too. So I think that the pointing a finger at them points 3 back at ourselves to have our own plan to be able to tell the residents, what are we going to do? We're going to do meetings every week with at a certain time. We have a meeting with these people. It's set up for every week. We have this is our contingency plan in case things don't happen, because as of right now, we just are saying, I hope it happens, and I hope that they will adhere to the contract because of the money involved. But what do we do if they don't?
Yeah. So I think our city administrator and city attorney have the message loud and clear. And all this is to say that I have no indication that our new partnership with Spectrum will be anything but fully successful. It just needs to move forward with respect to getting information to our residents. And I think that message is clear as well. And so I'm hopeful that we will have that in short order. Okay. Sure, Councilor.
Because in Ward 4, which is already has several different available, has a new sales rep that sent out emails to all sorts of folks in Ward 4 saying, I'm here and we're ready to do this. And we're ready to do that. So if all of these residents would have nothing contacted yet, their sales makers are.
Okay, so noted, we will communicate that. Counselor Garetano, motion to adjourn. You were going to.
Yeah, I'll say the motion to adjourn. I'll echo like what Councilmember Eden said, anything we can do to get information back and how we have to approve whatever addendum or a new agreement for those extra areas will be helpful to get that going.
It's on the list.
So with that, then I will go ahead and happily make the motion to adjourn unless there's any objection.
Seconded by Councilmember Flasher, non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?